Her fingers drum against the table, not with impatience but with rhythm, an unconscious beat that belongs to the ancient music of attraction. She reaches for her glass, and you notice how slowly her hand wraps around it, how deliberately her thumb traces the rim before she takes a sip. You think it's nothing, just idle fidgeting. But it is not nothing. It is the whisper of a signal older than words. She is speaking with her hands, and the message is carved deep into the marrow of human instinct. She wants to feel, and she wants to be felt. The hand is not merely flesh and bone. It is the most primal bridge between two bodies, the first instrument of contact, the first medium of intimacy. A woman's hand tells you more about her desire than her eyes or her lips ever will, because it betrays what the rest of her is trained to conceal. Her face can lie with smiles, her words can deceive with politeness, but her hand, restless and hungry, exposes her. And you have missed it countless times. She touches her neck when you speak, brushing the skin lightly, as though trying to soothe the flame that rises in her. She twists a ring, rolls a bracelet along her wrist, or runs her fingers along the edge of her dress. These are not accidents. These are confessions encrypted in motion. A woman's hand, when it lingers upon her own skin, is rehearsing what she imagines your hand would do. She cannot tell you outright. She cannot risk the shame of exposure. But the hand becomes her shadow voice, her traitor, her secret accomplice. And you, blind as so many men are, dismiss it as nervousness. You shrug it off as habit. You tell yourself she is distracted, when in truth she is broadcasting her hunger. This blindness is not innocent. It is the weakness of men trained to take words at face value. Men who no longer see beyond the surface. Women have evolved to veil their desire behind subtlety because raw openness is dangerous. If she were to state, "Touch me," she would risk everything. Her reputation, her control, her power. So she lets the hand speak instead, safe in its plausible deniability. You've seen it before, haven't you? She rests her hand too close to yours, fingers slightly extended, almost trembling in anticipation of an accidental brush. She places her palm on the table, open, exposed, a silent offering, waiting for you to recognize the script. That is not carelessness. That is bait. The hand, archetypally, is an invitation. To extend one's hand is to surrender power, to permit entry, to open the gates. And when a woman leaves her hand exposed near yours, she is gambling that you will read the unspoken invitation. But most men fail. They pull away. They bury themselves in chatter. They look at her face, searching for confirmation, when the truth was already lying open in front of them. That failure costs them the moment. She withdraws, embarrassed at her own boldness, and the window closes. The forbidden truth is this: when she places her hand in reach, she is already surrendering, already confessing, and you are too blind to claim it. The psychology runs deeper than surface gestures. Carl Jung spoke of the hand as a symbol of agency, of will, of action. For the feminine psyche, the hand carries an unconscious tension. It is the tool of giving and of receiving. When her hand moves toward you, even in small ways, it is her shadow pushing against the barriers of repression. She may not even know why she does it, but you, if you are awake, must know. Her unconscious is trying to seduce you before her conscious mind stops it. Picture this: a woman's fingers graze the stem of her wine glass, and she tilts it toward you, letting her wrist bend in your direction. This is not clumsiness. This is choreography. The bending wrist, the exposed underside of the arm, these are archetypal gestures of vulnerability, of feminine yielding. The animal within her wants you to see, but your conditioning tells you to dismiss it, and so you do, and so you lose. Ask yourself, how many times have you seen her laugh, only to cover her mouth with her hand, fingers spread loosely, but leaving just enough space for her gaze to pierce through? That is no mere modesty. That is the archetypal mask of the coy maiden, concealing her desire behind the hand while letting the eyes betray it. She shields her lips because she wishes they were touched. And the man who sees through the veil understands what others never will. The challenge is this. Will you continue to stumble in blindness, mistaking these signals for chance? Or will you train your perception to pierce through the camouflage of culture and catch the raw instinct beneath? Every man claims he wants access to female desire. Few are willing to sharpen their vision to see it. You've let it slip away before. Don't deny it. She touched her wrist. She brushed her fingers along the table toward you, and you froze. That hesitation was your defeat. But the game does not forgive weakness. Women live in shadow language because they must. You, however, have no excuse. If you fail to read her hands, you fail to read her desire. And the man who cannot read desire will never command it. Her fingers are storytellers, weaving ancient scripts your eyes have forgotten how to read. Watch closely the next time she laughs. Her hand flies up, not just to cover her smile, but to veil the raw exposure of her lips. It is the instinct of concealment, the age-old dance of shame and desire braided together. She hides because she wants. She conceals because revelation would be too dangerous. And yet, in that concealment, she reveals more than words ever could. A woman's hands betray the conflict between her conscious restraint and her unconscious hunger. She may speak in calm tones, feigning indifference, yet her fingers betray her as they twist a napkin into spirals, pick at the edge of her sleeve, or caress the condensation on a glass. These are not accidents. They are sublimations. Every restless movement of her hands is energy trying to escape, desire attempting to take form before her mind shuts it down. Think of the way she touches her jewelry. The necklace becomes a talisman, her fingers tracing its line down to her chest, circling, hesitating, lingering. The bracelet is spun around her wrist again and again, as if waiting for someone else's hand to stop the motion. The ring is twisted, pulled, removed, then slipped back on. Ritual gestures of anticipation and exposure. Archetypally, this is the feminine testing the boundaries of vulnerability. The hand becomes the medium of secret rehearsal. She imagines another's touch through the proxy of her own. And you've sat across from this ritual, blind as a child staring at smoke, never realizing the fire behind it. You convince yourself she is simply nervous, distracted, absent-minded. But the forbidden truth is simpler and sharper. She is signaling you. She is warming her body with touch because she hopes you will take over. She is tracing lines across her skin because she wishes your fingers were there instead. And if you fail to see it, she will not forgive. She will retreat into silence, into coldness, into distance. Carl Jung would tell you that the unconscious never lies. It only disguises. The hand in its restlessness is the unconscious speaking directly. It bypasses the rational mind, spilling truth into gesture. The feminine hand becomes the mask of the shadow. She reveals her longing by appearing to conceal it. That is the paradox. And only the man who looks deeper, who does not stop at appearances, can unlock the code. Notice how she positions her hands in relation to you. If she places them folded tightly, wrists tucked inward, she is protecting herself. But if she leaves them loose, fingers extended, palms slightly upturned, she is unconsciously exposing herself to you. The palm is the most vulnerable surface of the body, devoid of armor, rich with nerve endings. When a woman lays her palm open in your presence, she is offering more than skin. She is offering surrender. She is saying without words, "Here, take what is unguarded." And yet, how many times have you ignored it? She leaned her arm on the table, her hand resting inches from yours, fingers slightly parted, waiting. You kept talking, kept laughing, kept drowning in the surface-level game, never daring to close the gap. She withdrew quietly, almost imperceptibly, and you never saw her again. That is the cost of blindness. A single missed signal, and she convinces herself you did not want her. There is a darker layer still. Some women weaponize the hand deliberately, conscious of its archetypal power. They will graze your arm as they pass, not by mistake, but by design. They will brush imaginary dust from your sleeve, claiming innocence while their touch burns through you. They will hand you a pen, a glass, a lighter, but in doing so, Their fingers linger just a second too long. These gestures seem trivial, but in the symbolic economy of desire, they are everything. And here is where men fail most. They mistake these touches as casual friendliness, as politeness. But they are neither casual nor polite. They are calculated openings. Every brush of her fingers is a probe into your masculinity. Will you notice? Will you respond? Or will you collapse into the safety of ignorance? You've been there before. A woman's hand grazed yours as she passed the menu. She looked away quickly, pretending nothing happened. Your heart raced, but you told yourself it was chance. It wasn't chance. It was the coded test of the feminine shadow, and you failed. She left that night, telling herself you lacked the instinct, the awareness, the danger she craved. A woman cannot and will not say directly, "I want you." Culture forbids it, shame forbids it, her own ego forbids it. But her hands, restless, trembling, searching, will always betray her. They tell the truth her lips cannot risk. The question is simple, brutal, and inescapable. Will you learn to read her hands, or will you remain the man who stares into her eyes while missing the script playing just inches away? Her fingers linger on the edge of the table, just close enough for you to feel the gravity of her presence. She doesn't need to move them toward you any further, because the silence of her gesture is louder than words. The feminine hand becomes a magnet, testing whether you have the courage to close the gap. It is in this suspended moment, this fragile hesitation, where the balance of power tilts. The truth is this: women rarely risk the first open act. Their sexuality is veiled, coded, buried beneath layers of modesty and plausible deniability. Yet the body always leaks, and the hand, more than any other part, betrays the truth. She scratches lightly at her collarbone. She presses her fingers into the skin of her thigh. She adjusts her sleeve when it doesn't need adjusting. Every gesture is the body trying to say what the lips cannot. Think of how often she touches her own mouth while listening to you. A finger rests against her lips. A thumb grazes the corner of her mouth as if in thought. To you, it seems like idle concentration, but unconsciously, she is drawing attention to the very place she fears you noticing. Archetypally, this is the Madonna mask slipping, the saint touching the forbidden zone, hinting at the shadow within. Now consider the hair. The hand in the hair is one of the oldest codes of feminine desire. She sweeps it back, exposing her neck for a moment too long. She twirls it, knots it, releases it. Each movement is a ritual, unconscious, yet deliberate. The hand in the hair is not simply grooming, it is symbolic exposure, an animal gesture of readiness, a primal showcase of her vulnerability. And if you're not awake to it, you miss the seduction written in plain sight. But here's the party most men cannot stomach. She will not hold the signal open forever. If you fail to act, her unconscious judges you unworthy. She tells herself you are safe, weak, or blind. And once that verdict is cast, she withdraws into the shell of polite distance. Her hands stiffen, movements sharpen, gestures become economical. The flow is gone. The energy evaporates. You had your chance, and it died with your hesitation. You've experienced this death before, though you may not have admitted it. You sat across from her, saw her fingers tracing the lip of her glass, and you ignored it. Later, she crossed her arms and ended the game without saying a word. She didn't need to. Her hands had already declared the verdict. She offered, you refused, and she erased you from her realm of possibility. There is something more dangerous still. The hand can wound as easily as it invites. A woman who does not desire you will keep her hands away. She will fold them tight, bury them in her lap, shield herself. She will avoid accidental brushes, retreating into a fortress of guarded stillness. The absence of gesture is also communication. It is the denial of entry, the closed door, the symbolic death of attraction. If you do not know how to read both sides of this language, you walk blind through the battlefield of desire. Jung would remind you that every symbol contains its opposite. The same hand that caresses also strikes. The same palm that opens also closes. To the feminine psyche, this duality is not contradiction, it is essence. That is why men who live only on surface signals are perpetually lost. They believe attraction is spoken in words, while the real battle plays out in the theater of hands. Now ask yourself this: how many times has a woman brushed her hand against yours in a crowded space, only to pretend it never happened? Did you shrink, afraid to break the illusion? Did you laugh it off as an accident? That cowardice is why she turned cold, why she disappeared into silence. You tell yourself she wasn't interested, but deep down you know. It was your blindness that killed it. The forbidden truth is brutal. Women will never explain their gestures. They rely on the man's instinct to perceive, to pierce the veil. If he cannot, he is not chosen. If he hesitates, he is forgotten. Her hands will not wait for you to learn. They will move on to another sharper man who sees what you refuse to see. You stand at the crossroads every time her fingers twitch, every time her palm opens, every time her nails graze the surface of her skin. Either you learn to read her hands as the script of desire, or you remain exiled from the kingdom of her body forever. She sits across from you, the room filled with the dull hum of conversation, but the real dialogue is happening beneath the table. Her hands rest there, unseen by others, yet every twitch, every restless adjustment is part of the silent war between concealment and revelation. She grazes her thigh with her fingertips, as if calming some unseen tension. She taps her nails against the wood in a pattern almost rhythmic, like a heartbeat growing faster in your presence. This is not random. This is her unconscious body calling out, daring you to notice. A woman's hands are portals into the archetypal feminine. In mythology, the goddess often extends her hand to the hero, not with words but with silent gesture. The hand is the threshold of union, the bridge between isolation and intimacy. When a woman lets her hand linger within your reach, she is invoking that same archetypal script. She is not just offering flesh, she is offering initiation. And yet most men miss it. They sit trapped in logic, waiting for spoken confirmation, when the confirmation has already been laid bare in her fingertips. Watch closely when she fidgets with small objects. The pen spun endlessly between her fingers, the straw wrapper shredded to pieces, the spoon twirled without purpose. These are conduits for nervous energy, yes, but beneath that lies something darker. Her hands cannot sit still because her body is alive with suppressed electricity. The object becomes the substitute for what she wishes to touch. What she wishes would touch her. It is displacement, a shadowy rehearsal of intimacy. How many times have you seen this and shrugged it off? You told yourself she was bored. You assumed she was anxious. You failed to recognize that her hands were screaming the truth her words could never say. And because of your blindness, she chose silence over exposure, retreat over risk. There is a reason she will not voice her desire. Society punishes female openness, branding her as reckless if she declares it. Her reputation is her armor. So she disguises longing in the smallest of gestures, trusting only the man with sharpened perception to see through it. That is the essence of the forbidden language. If you do not read it, she does not correct you. She simply vanishes. Consider the archetypal significance of touch. For the feminine psyche, touch is surrender. The hand is both weapon and offering. When she grazes your arm by accident, she is risking rejection in disguise. If you recoil, she can retreat behind innocence. If you respond, she can claim it was never her doing. This plausible deniability is not weakness, it is power. She shields herself from shame while testing your strength. Do you see the cunning? Do you see the danger? Picture this. You walk beside her, and her hand swings just close enough to brush yours. Once, twice, again. She doesn't grip, doesn't seize. She merely hovers in the field of possibility. It is an unconscious dare. If you ignore it, you prove yourself blind. If you take it too abruptly, you prove yourself clumsy. But if you time it with precision, meeting her half-step, claiming her fingers with certainty, you step into the role of the man who sees, the man who leads, the man she cannot resist. The forbidden truth is this: her hands will rarely tell you no. They will either say yes subtly, or they will say nothing at all. Her rejection is silence, withdrawal, stillness. Her invitation is movement, fidgeting, brushing, offering. To fail to see this is to live in exile from the feminine realm. You've lived that exile, haven't you? The woman whose hand brushed yours at the bar, and you did nothing. The woman who spun her straw while staring into your eyes, and you dismissed it. The woman who rested her open palm on the table near you, waiting, and you kept talking like a fool. Each one slipped away, not because she wasn't interested, but because you weren't awake. That is the wound of the blind man. He loses what was already his because he never dared to recognize it. The masculine path demands perception. To lead, you must first see. To claim, you must first read. If you fail to sharpen your awareness, you will always stand outside the temple of desire, staring at locked doors while the key was in front of you the whole time. Her hands are not ornaments. They are weapons, invitations, betrayals, and offerings. They are the oldest language of the feminine shadow. And until you learn to read them, you will always remain deaf to the only words that matter. Her hand brushes yours for the briefest second, and the entire world holds its breath. The crowd, the noise, the lights, none of it matters. That fleeting graze carries more weight than 1,000 spoken confessions. It is the archetypal initiation, the silent collapse of boundaries. She won't repeat it twice. She won't explain it. She won't linger if you hesitate. That moment is your crucible, and only the men who recognize it seize the power hidden inside. Every culture in history has encoded the hand with symbols of union and power. To shake hands is to forge trust. To kiss the hand is to honor submission. To intertwine fingers is to dissolve the line between me and you. Women know this unconsciously. That's why she hides her hand when she doesn't want you, bearing it beneath folded arms or clenching it into stillness. And that's why when desire betrays her, her hands erupt into restless choreography, fidgeting, brushing, touching, offering. You've seen her trace invisible lines on the table. You've seen her rub her wrist, stroke her thigh, play with her sleeve until the fabric frays. These are not trivial motions. They are suppressed flames, unconscious rehearsals of what she longs for but cannot admit. When her fingers skim her own skin, it is the shadow reaching for you while her conscious mind retreats in fear. And here is the forbidden truth. She doesn't want you to ask. She doesn't want you to seek permission. She wants you to know, to see, to move. If you wait for her words, you've already lost. If you demand clarity, you expose yourself as uninitiated. The masculine must act in response to the feminine's unspoken invitation. That is the ancient law of polarity. But many men stumble here. They fear misreading, so they freeze. They hope for certainty, so they wait. They drown in doubt while the moment evaporates. And she, silently, passes judgment. To her, hesitation is weakness. Blindness is unworthiness. The man who cannot read her hands cannot hold her soul. She may smile politely, she may linger for a while, but inside the decision is already made. You've been weighed, you've been dismissed. Think of the women who slipped from your life. They did not vanish because they were never interested. They vanished because you failed the test. You failed to respond when her hand brushed yours under the dim light. You failed to notice when her palm rested open within reach. You failed to seize the archetypal moment when she concealed her smile behind her fingers, eyes blazing with signals you never claimed. And because you were blind, she told herself you weren't the one. Carl Jung warned that the unconscious rules our lives when we fail to make it conscious. A woman's hand is her unconscious, laid bare in gesture. If you dismiss it as accident, if you ignore it as nervousness, you condemn yourself to live at the surface, blind to the depths where true desire moves. The man who masters this perception sees what others cannot. He reads the forbidden text written in skin and sinew. He becomes dangerous, irresistible, chosen. Imagine this. You sit beside her, her fingers trace the rim of her glass, and instead of drowning in small talk, you lean closer. Your hand meets hers deliberately, firmly, as though it was inevitable. No apology, no hesitation. In that instant, she knows you are the man who sees, the man who acts, the man who does not fear the shadow. That is the difference between the weak and the awakened. The climax of understanding is simple, brutal, liberating. Female sexuality is not declared. It is encoded. The hand is the cipher. It is at once a veil and a revelation, a mask and a confession. If you cannot read it, you are lost. If you can, you hold the key to a world other men will never touch. So the next time her fingers fidget, the next time her palm hovers open, the next time her hand brushes yours in that split second of possibility, you must decide. Do you remain blind or do you see? Do you freeze or do you claim? Desire is never spoken, only signaled. Learn to see it or be blind forever. Subscribe to the Stoic Path for more archetypal truths, Jungian psychology, and timeless philosophy.